So, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 20 has just dropped. And I'm already excited for the next chapter, because where this chapter ends off, it ends off with some of the biggest cliffhanger I've ever experienced in my life. I need to find out more about Sarada's Mangekyu Sharingan abilities, because this is exactly what we get to see in the later stages of this chapter. But let's first start off with the chapter cover. And the chapter cover for this chapter is Konohamaru. And we actually see Konohamaru with a bit of swag. He has a little bit of swagger to him with this pose. I actually like this pose a lot. Ikimoto did cook. Background may not be my favorite background. I know that there's probably some cool details that have been integrated in this background that I'm probably missing. We don't get the extra text that we usually get, but what we do get is the title for this chapter, which is Because of Love. And that makes a lot of sense, not only with Konohamaru in this chapter, but also with Sarada in the later stages of this chapter. So it starts off right where we left off. We have a Konohamaru who is being pierced by this tree formation or this wood style that Matsuri is using with her hair. We have some dialogue from Matsuri, who is basically telling him that she has no choice but to end up devouring Konohamaru. We have Konohamaru who thinks back to Shikamaru, and Shikamaru tells them that he has to befriend the Senju and ultimately betray them, as they are wild beasts and basically have no emotional experience. So Konohamaru, at first it appears like he's simply trying to sweet talk Matsuri to basically cause her not to kill him because he didn't have any other choice. He tells Matsuri that if Matsuri devours him, he will die and then she will never be able to talk to him. Then Matsuri explains that she is dealing with two sorts of emotion, one of trying to get closer to Konohamaru, but one of also feeling quite weird due to the fact of these new emotions that she is feeling towards Konohamaru. This is then deemed to be dangerous, and due to this combination, instead of just killing Konohamaru, she will mix and devour Konohamaru, essentially becoming one with Konohamaru. And when they say mix together, this tells me now that whoever they end up devouring, they do end up becoming maybe a new entity, or at least mixing their powers together to create a higher being. And this is what Matsuri is compelled to do. And I really like this panel here. Ikimoto cooks a lot with the art here. I know this is probably wood style, but maybe I would like a little bit more clarification on exactly what it does. Does the person have to be killed for them to be devoured, or are they absorbed in some way, shape, or form like we saw with Jira and Himawari? And maybe a little bit more clarification on this, maybe in the volumes to come, would be quite interesting. We end up going back to the fight between Sarada, Mitsuki, Ayara, Yada versus Ryu, and this fight is getting near its climax due to the fact that Ayara can no longer use his wind style to end up stopping Ryu's Iron Sand, and this is essentially what ends up happening here, as Ayara has now fallen under the control of Ryu's Iron Sand. But Mitsuki, the only person who seems to be standing at the moment, he ends up fighting against Ryu. And this is where we see the sneak peek panel between Ryu and Mitsuki that we had seen before, where he had a Ryu who is backing off from Mitsuki's snakes. But then, right when he was about to strike Ryu again, Ryu ends up taking Ayara and using him as a shield, causing Mitsuki to end up stopping for a period of time so that he doesn't end up hitting Ayara. During that time, Ryu uses this as the perfect opportunity to end up striking Mitsuki. One thing that is quite interesting is that AP wise, maybe Mitsuki has been able to keep up. However, speed wise, especially when we see with the snakes, and we also see it when Mitsuki is not able to react to Ryu's Iron Sand, maybe the biggest problem here is the fact that Mitsuki maybe has a speed disadvantage when it comes to the Iron Sand and him being able to deal with Ryu. But continuing on, Mitsuki is defeated, he is knocked out of his Sage Mode, and after he is knocked out of his Sage Mode, Ryu ends up taking control of his body. What is quite interesting again is the fact that every time we have seen Ryu take control of Mitsuki's body, it has only been after he has been out of his Sage Mode. And when he is in his Sage Mode, Mitsuki is still able to fight even though Ryu has the Iron Sand in the battlefield. Is this just a coincidence due to the fact that Ryu didn't try to do it when Mitsuki has his Sage Mode? Maybe not, maybe yes, but it is something that is quite interesting to point out. But essentially, as Ryu says, it looks like it is checkmate. And we have Mitsuki, Ayara, Ryu, and some Clawgrams that are all on Ryu's side effectively, as they are being controlled using the Iron Sand. We have Ayara who tells them to end up running away and forgetting about them because they have essentially been captured. And now we have Ryu who basically asks them to give them intel on Boruto and his ally so that he won't have to kill them, but if that is not the case, then he will simply wipe them out one by one. Mitsuki tells them to not fall for it and not believe it because he is going to kill them regardless. Yada, who obviously has a lot of sentiment for Shinki, and I have heard a lot of people basically hate on Yado this chapter. I don't see the reason why you would hate on Yado for basically telling Sarada to give up on Boruto and end up releasing that information, due to the fact that from Yado's perspective, due to omnipotence, she believed that Boruto ended up killing Naruto and then committed these egregious crimes and went rogue. Due to that fact, it makes no sense for Sarada to be defending this rogue ninja who is only causing harm to the village. So giving up on somebody like him to save their lives and their friends would be something that is deemed to be a good move, a smart one. However, Yado doesn't have the full story, and that's why Sarada basically tells her that she would not give up her friends to save herself. And that is almost like a parallel to what Obito said to Kakashi once, when he said that he would prioritize his friend over the mission, and that if you don't do so, you are more than scum. So I also like this interaction right here. But then Yado basically tries to come up with a different plan, and that plan is for her to end up helping Ryu out to get more intel on Boruto. The reason that she does so is because she understands that Sarada, this person Boruto, means a lot to Sarada, and it is the same thing that she feels for Shinki, and thus she is willing to put her life on the line to end up helping Ryu out, who could potentially backstab her for an opportunity to end up saving Shinki. So all of this makes a lot of sense. Everybody is fighting for their own people, so I don't understand the Yado hate that we have in this chapter. But we end up going back to Matsuri and Konohamaru, with a Matsuri who ends up crying. And a Konohamaru who basically sees this happening and then ends up using it as a perfect opportunity to manipulate her into dropping her guard, as Konohamaru called her Matsuri, which is essentially one of the reasons why she is crying even more and in a place of emotional distress, as this is basically Konohamaru calling Matsuri by her given name. We end up seeing Matsuri cry, but then we end up going back to the Shinji dimension when Jura is also crying, observing everything that is going on, and we have a Hidari who is not crying at all. It doesn't seem like Bug is doing much, but Hidari is looking at Jura with a bit of question. He's like, yo, why is this guy crying? But he doesn't understand everything that is going on, and it is clear, at least to me, that Jura maybe has a lot more of emotional understanding, which is why he ends up crying in this situation, potentially due to feeling some sort of empathy towards both Konohamaru and Matsuri. Then Konohamaru asks Matsuri, could you squeeze my hand? And for a lot of people who are saying that the Senju are not using their Rinnegan abilities, probably their Rinnegan abilities that are not as useful as we saw in the Naruto series, but at least when it comes to their ocular dojutsu, in the sense that it is all linked, which is why they can see what is happening in the battlefield, it can easily be said that they are definitely using the Rinnegan ability. Konohamaru ends up asking Matsuri to join hands, and when he does so, we have the narration of Shikamaru telling Konohamaru basically to betray them. And we have Shikamaru say, Konohamaru, become friends with them, tame them while these wild beasts are still innocent cubs, and then betray them. And I really love what we end up seeing here, an epic panel of the Rasengan with so many different vortexes that we see around them. To be honest, I think I really like the way Ikimoto draws the Rasengan a lot more than Kishimoto, because you have to think about what the Rasengan is. It's basically a bunch of chakra that is spinning around in vortexes. When we saw it in the Naruto series, it looked more like a ball, and obviously it still looks more like a ball, but I love the addition of multiple different vortexes inside the Rasengan itself that just make it look even cooler. Ikimoto really cooked. And then we have Konohamaru say, giant Rasengan. And this is one of my favorite moments from Konohamaru. And we get this beautiful panel. I really love when Ikimoto does the eye thing and the dry lips. Ikimoto really really cooked this chapter when it comes to the art. This is really tough right here. And we have Shikamaru say, this is the perfect plan. If you truly consider them nothing but foes, get them to drop their guards so you can kill them. So anybody who's saying that this is Matsuri at full power, clearly you're not reading the series. And we have a statement here saying, to cause them to drop their guard so you can kill them. So without them being able to drop their guard, there is no way that Konohamaru would be able to deal this much damage to Matsuri. So if you're saying that the power scaling makes no sense, if you're saying that Konohamaru is now stronger than Matsuri, clearly we are not reading the same series. But we have Matsuri say Konohamaru-cha. And then we have the beautiful narration of Jura that I really love to see in this chapter. He says, because of love, Matsuri wavered over devouring him and allowed him to trick her and deliver a painful counter. And also because of love, Sarutobi Konohamaru fell prey to doubt and foolishness, let victory slip away from his grasp. So essentially, Konohamaru did not kill off Matsuri in this case because he also felt some sort of emotion. And this is the part that I knew was going to happen in this chapter due to the fact that we have this new concept of ninja who are not heartless. And Konohamaru, although he was pushed to become this old version of the ninja, which is to essentially be a heartless ninja, killing various different people, this proves to show that shinobis cannot get rid of their human heart, and thus he fell prey to doubts and foolishness, which basically led to victory slipping away. Now, we have a Konohamaru who basically seems like this time ain't no plot convenience, this time ain't no plot armor, your time has come. Konohamaru, it's time for you to get packed up. And unfortunately, we don't see him get packed up in that one instance. However, the person who ends up looking like they're gonna die is Yado, as Yado ends up getting speared by Ryu's Iron Sand, with a Ryu who says, that will be a no thank you for me. And please don't talk down on me, I get easily annoyed. And bro, Ryu is really that guy. He actually has some of the funniest dialogue. Ryu's actually one about the funniest Senju out there. Ryu is definitely the funniest Senju out there. He is too funny in my personal opinion, and I love hearing his dialogue. But it really appears that it might be over for Yado. But what we do end up having here in this case is almost an Android 16 and Gohan type situation, where we have a Yado who says this. We have basically the worst situation happening here. Yado seems to be dead, and we have Mitsuki and Yara who are under control. Sarada is also about to be under control, but then Yado says this. I'm not sure why it's happening now, but I can hear it really well. Remember, Yado has advanced hearing, which causes her to be a great sensory ninja. She continues to say, you don't know yourself at all, do you? Your feelings, why do you want to be strong? I can tell you right now, it's clear to me that you misunderstand. You're probably deluding yourself subconsciously. What are you talking about, Sarada says. Yado says that she is referring to the power that you have been letting rot. She continues by saying, I don't know why or what you're holding back, but it's okay to use it for things other than just the greater good. You're allowed to use it for and only for that special person in your life, to protect them. And it is in that instance where we see Sarada activate her third Tomoe Sharingan, and then all of a sudden, the sand starts to get peeled. And then we see this almost vortex like black hole that is starting to suck up the iron sand around them, essentially freeing Ayara, Mitsuki, and all those who were affected by the sand, including Sarada herself. We get this side panel of Sarada with the Mangekyo Sharingan, and then she ends up looking at Mitsuki, and Mitsuki realizes that she has activated her Mangekyo Sharingan. This is the part where the chapter ends up ending, and it is absolutely amazing what we do end up seeing in this chapter. Now, what's interesting here, and one thing that we have to point out, two things that we have to point out. First, starting with the fact of Sarada and the dialogue that Yado ends up telling us, and what it ends up revealing about Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan. Did Sarada know that she had the Mangekyo Sharingan unlocked? Was it a fact that she forgot that it ended up happening and that she doesn't know? The clear answer that we get in this chapter is that this case is no. Sarada knew that she had the Mangekyo Sharingan, but however, she placed such an unconscious burden on her using the Mangekyo Sharingan that she basically did not allow herself to do it, to use it subconsciously if it wasn't for the greater good. And essentially, in this instance, Yado is telling her that it is fine for her to use her powers to protect Boruto. And in this case, you can say Boruto is not here, so how is she protecting Boruto? The whole fact of them fighting the Senju is for Boruto not to have to come here and end up fighting the likes of the Senju, ultimately pushing Jira to end up coming. But also from Sarada's perspective, she doesn't want to give up valuable intel that will put Boruto in a worse situation, and thus she has to get stronger where she won't have to rely on Boruto, saving her time after time and putting Boruto in these tough binds, which will ultimately lead him towards making an appearance and putting him towards greater risk. So she wants to get stronger to protect Boruto. But she also was holding herself back due to that very own fact that Boruto is viewed as this said traitor. So she does have this Mangekyo Sharingan. However, the reason she was able to awaken it in the first place was because of Boruto. So when she holds herself back of trying to help Boruto out, just like Sumire was making it a case that she is overdoing it, so subconsciously she wasn't going to be able to unlock her Mangekyo Sharingan without ever feeling that it was okay for her to try and help Boruto because of the conversation that she had with Sumire, which acted as this mental block. So, did Sarada not know that she had the Mangekyo Sharingan? The case is proven in this case that it is not. She knew that she had those rotting powers, as Yado herself was able to tell. However, subconsciously, due to all the conversations that she had with Sumire, she had this mental block where she felt like she was not helping Boruto at all and thus had to relax. But in this instance, after talking to Yado, she realized that it is okay to want to help Boruto out, making it the perfect moment for her to end up using her Mangekyo Sharingan. What we have here is almost this black hole ability from her Mangekyo Sharingan to end up absorbing these powers. And one thing that it is interesting is that when it comes to sand and iron sand, the sand from Gaara and the iron sand from Shinki and Ryu, those things are not actually chakra, due to the fact that you won't actually be able to absorb those abilities using the karma or using Momoshiki's Rasengan. We saw that with Momoshiki himself when he was fighting the likes of Gaara, because although chakra helps in weaving that ability, the sand itself and the iron sand in this case is real iron sand and not chakra. So the karma or the Rasengan would not be able to absorb the iron sand. However, this ability was able to do so, which makes it even more interesting. So those are my personal thoughts on the chapter so far. You guys let me know your thoughts, comments, and concerns. I'd rate this chapter a cool 8.5 to 9. The next chapter is going to be absolutely amazing and probably a 10 out of 10 when we get more of a description of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities. You guys let me know your thoughts, comments, and concerns in the comment section below. It's been your boy Dynasty, and I'm out, bruh.